Hello students, this is Alan Boris coming to you from my office here at Kenai Peninsula College, and we are going to go through a brief overview, a concise overview of an anthropological approach to the study of religion. Before you go into the Dena'ina Religion lecture, some of you may not have had a course in the anthropology of religion or similar type of course, so I thought I'd just give this really short overview of how anthropologists approach the study of religion. Just to emphasize, we're not interested in the philosophy of religion directly. We're not interested in finding the true religion, the right religion. We are interested in how religion or supernatural concepts interact with the culture. And that's our context. That's how we'll approach it as we look at Dena'ina religion. So just a few approaches. Not all are exclusively religious anthropology religion approaches, but approaches to get you thinking in terms of how you might contextualize the information about Dena'ina religion. Pierre Bourdieu, French sociologist, anthropologist, extremely prolific, thoughtful person, developed many concepts, including habitus, the idea that cognitively embedded connections express worldview, such that we think of those as human nature. And many of those embedded connections do have to do with religion or religious views, such that they tend to become like human nature. So one person's human nature, they can't understand another person's human nature, because why doesn't everybody think that way? These are derived from learned concepts, culturally defined, supernatural and natural. In our Western world, supernatural having to do with concepts of religion, natural having to do with concepts of science, all of these contributing to human nature. And indirectly, you could say something similar to indigenous peoples, where there are spiritual or supernatural concepts and the direct observation and knowledge of nature, which was amazingly detailed. And the people tending not to think of those as two separate entities as we do in our culture. To Bourdieu, these are cognitively embedded, and he would say at the brain level. So we know that humans, to refer to this bottom chart here, that humans are born with the same number of neurons you die with, or at least you don't regenerate neurons. In fact, you die with a few less. But what does happen, particularly through the first 3 years of life, but now we know it can happen throughout life, is dendritic branching, the connectivity of axon and dendrite between neurons, between nerve cells, which is in response to the learned environment, which is in response to the cultural environment. No two brains are exactly the same. No two brains are wired the same, but two brains of people of a similar culture will tend to be wired similarly, none the same. So this becomes that basis of human nature, but it is a learned human nature. There is no one human nature. So anthropologists tend not to use the concept of human nature. Clifford Geertz is another thinker, anthropologist. He had a definition of religion. Religion is, one, a system of symbols. So those symbols may be tangible symbols, such as a cross, or architectural symbol, or it may be intangible, a story or a ritual. These are all symbolic, or can be symbolic, which acts to establish powerful, pervasive, and long-lasting moods and motivations in men. We'll say humans today. He was writing in 1973. That by formulating conceptions of a general order of existence, worldview in other words, and for clothing these conceptions with such an aura of factuality that 5, the moods and motivations, seem uniquely realistic. Another sort of wordy view of what Bourdieu was saying, a kind of human nature. They seem true. They seem factual, and people who have a religious belief, it is true to them. It's true to them, and we should understand that. Anthony Wallace, a more ecological view. Religion, to Wallace, is a system of rituals rationalized by myth, which mobilizes supernatural power for the purpose of achieving or preventing transformations of state in humans and nature. A system of rituals. So to Wallace, religion is ritual, and to many other thinkers, religion is ritual. And one rationalized by myth, in other words, stories. Stories that provide the basis for why you do what you do. We talked about the first salmon ceremony among the Dena'ina. The story is a myth, but it became the basis for a ritual that pays homage to the first salmon coming and is a world renewal ceremony, which which mobilizes supernatural power for the purpose of achieving or preventing transformations of state in humans and nature. The coming of the seasons, or the changes in the weather, or the coming of the animals, or what happens at death, transformations of state in humans and nature. So this is part of religion to Anthony Wallace. All of these thinkers don't ask, as I said, what is the true religion. They try to give us a context for thinking about religion in terms of how it relates to the culture and vice versa. Another approach, this is the earliest one, quite early, Abram, Kardiner, and Cora Dubois. I couldn't find a good picture of Cora Dubois. That's the best I could find on the internet. So they take a more psychoanalytic approach. In the 30s was the heyday of psychoanalytic anthropology. So religion to them is a system where rituals and beliefs more or less adequately resolve cultural conflicts produced from inherent contradictions or inconsistencies in the culture. And this, by the way, is very much an approach that Anthony Wallace would have supported. The idea that cultures present inherent conflicts, inherent conflicts that are difficult to resolve. So, for example, today women in modern American society have the tradition of woman as mother, giving birth, raising a child or children, and also now moving into the workforce. So women as an economic force, and that's very difficult to do, both at a high level. Very difficult to do. The culture has presented women today, many women today, with conflicts. And you have to somehow figure out a way to resolve those conflicts. Or cultures produce inconsistencies. No culture is, in a sense, a perfect entity. And so religion is one way to try to resolve those. So, for example, there's a little model of their point of view, and there's the environment. The broad environment that the culture adapts to through primary institutions of subsistence, family, family structure, child rearing. All of these sorts of things are primary institutions to Kardiner and Dubois that reflect an adaptation to the environment. Included in that, then, is a psychological adaptation that can be unhealthy or healthy. unhealthy. If it's unhealthy, that's the role of secondary institutions, religion, rituals, mythology, all really part of the same. So through rituals or through religious practice, one deals with one's psychological anxiety. One deals with one's psychological problems, and through that can resolve them back to healthy, back to being a productive member or a more functional member of a culture. So this is a bit dated now, but still the basic thinking that religion functions to resolve conflicts that are inherent in the culture, not inherent in something else, but inherent in the culture, is what religion does. We've already encountered Victor Turner, so just to reiterate what Victor Turner's approach: structure, anti-structure, and structure. Structure is cultural practice. And these cultural practices can cause tensions, anxieties, frustrations, and they build. And anti-structure then is ritual, some type of ritual, communitas, a group ritual, which results in a feeling of oneness. When all structure is eliminated from one's mind, time and space now become meaningless. You're in a liminal state, at least for the time being, in that ritual. And often that ritual is a religious ritual. So religion functions to deal with the stress and anxiety of the culture. Coming out the other end, structure is restored, cultural practices resume, and of course then tensions build, anxieties build, frustrations build, and so this becomes a never-ending system of moving from structure to anti-structure to structure to anti-structure in dealing with life. So those are a number of approaches. There are others, but all of these are ways in which one can approach religion in the study of culture. I may ask you to take one of these and apply it to the anthropology of the Dena'ina for a test item, for example. So be thinking about these and as we talk about Dena'ina. So I should point out that the Dena'ina view that spirituality is literal truth. I think it's safe to say that virtually all indigenous people don't philosophize about their religious practice. It is reality. It is habitus. It's not something you think, well, maybe I should do something different. Maybe I should practice some other. Maybe I should adopt a different religion. No, it is part of one's core being. It is part of one's worldview or worldviews. So Dena'ina, traditional Dena'ina, for example, the little people would be the Treli Denaye, the mountain people, would be a reality. They really existed. They really were there. It's not our place to judge and to say, oh, it's just superstition, it's just this, or it's just that. It is our place to understand the religion in the context of the culture and how each reinforces one with the other. That traditional Dena'ina view later merged with Orthodoxy and later other religions, and we will talk about that when we talk about the events of the early historic period. So spirits exist, animal forces exist, and other powers exist and interact with them, and that shapes and informs behavior. So these are sometimes contrary to what we in the Western world think as rational. Surely those things can exist, a figment of one's imagination. But I would say that they were part of a spiritual basis of a sustainable culture. Again, we don't ask, were they right, were they wrong, but how did that work to provide a basis for living in a very sustainable culture? I think it's also true that religion can be right or wrong. Now, not everyone would perhaps agree with me. Certainly not every anthropologist would agree with me. But let me just provide you with my approach to this. So it can be wrong if it's maladaptive. Certainly the beliefs and practices that were associated with Jonestown seem maladaptive. That was the group from, they were out of San Francisco that moved to, I forget where they moved to, in South America somewhere. A kind of cult, a kind of group, and their leader, from a religious basis, ordered them all to take poison, and they all died. That's maladaptive. It's not an adaptive religion. In a similar vein, the Shakers are a religion who do not believe in sex or procreation. I believe there are now about 4 Shakers left. The only way you can become a Shaker again is by converting to that particular religion. So Shakers, that in my mind is maladaptive. Religions can be wrong if a religion can be wrong if it promotes genocide or other universally recognized atrocities. That's wrong, and that's to be condemned. Religion can be right if it reinforces equal access to power, a way to deal with the fears, cultural fears, but fears nevertheless. It can be right if it enhances sustainability and enhances fundamental human rights, of which we have a couple of pretty good documents now, the United Nations Statement of Human Rights and the United Nations Statement of Indigenous Rights, both of which would be very valuable for you to familiarize yourself with. So, just a quick overview of anthropology of religion. And it's a broad and deep subject, and we will use some of these concepts as we look at Dena'ina religion. Thank you.